Welcome to A Well-Designed Business with your host, LuAnn. LuAnn has a lifetime of experience building a multi-million-dollar business with her husband and cousin, and she knows the challenges you face in your interior design business. LuAnn brings you real-life answers to your most pressing problems, as well as practical strategies to explode your interior design business. So, let's get to the business of interior design.
Hi, thanks so much for joining me, and welcome to another episode of A Well-Designed Business. On the show today, I have Enoch Sears. Enoch is a licensed California architect. He is the founder and publisher of Business of Architecture, and he is the co-founder of the Architect Marketing Institute. In addition to these things, though, he is the creator and the host of the #1 interview podcast for architects, The Business of Architecture. And this is exactly how I came across Enoch. I'm one of his listeners. I enjoy his show. I think that what he does is really terrific. He actually does a lot of the same things that we do here, except, of course, his target is architects. But when I'm listening to his show, I simply mentally switch the word architect for interior designer, because Enoch each week is interviewing architects on how they run their firms and the things that they do to increase their profitability and their efficiency. He also talks with outside industry experts, just like we do on our Power Talk Friday, to help architects with the other tools and things that they need to make their firms more profitable. So I thought it would be a good fit for us. And I've been after him for a little bit of a while here to try and get him on the show. But the thing is, it's because he's so busy. In addition to these endeavors, the podcast and founder of the Architect Marketing Institute and the publisher of the Business of Architecture, he is also an expert business coach, and he's famous for helping architects grow their firms, grow their income, and increase their freedom through effective client strategies. And so I really am very, very grateful that Enoch found an hour for us today, and I think that you're going to be glad too. He went through a 12-step questionnaire process that he recommends to architects that I had a feeling would be a terrific translation right to interior designers, and as we went through it, it's exactly that. It really is a questionnaire that will apply and could apply to you in order to help you attract your ideal interior design projects and to attract to you your ideal interior design clients. Okay, him and his partner, Richard Petrie, developed this, and I was very impressed by it. I hope you will be as well. I think you're going to love this show. Just hang on for just a moment while I tell you about our sponsor, and we'll be right back to meet Enoch.
My name is Lenora Demars of 910 Design. I've been a MyDoma user since 2015 and have been very pleased with the results. I used to struggle to explain my services and my processes. It was hard for me and the potential client. Now I can walk them through the process using MyDoma, and they can easily visualize what it will be like to work with me. All I can say is now using MyDoma Studio, I close more projects on the first consults than ever before. My suggestion is to go check it out at mydomastudio.com/awelldesignedbusiness. There's even a special offer for listeners of A Well-Designed Business.
Hi, Enoch. Thanks so much for joining me on A Well-Designed Business today.
Hey, LuAnn, great to talk to you. Glad you reached out. Good to be on the podcast.
Yes, I have been listening to your podcast, and for any of our listeners, our colleagues out there that aren't familiar with it, I think that they will find that a lot of the information crosses right over from architects that you speak to interior designers. At least when I'm listening, I find that it does. And so, yes, I did reach out because I was very interested in having you on and actually sharing your podcast with my listeners. And also, you do a lot of you provide a lot of resources for architects on growing their business and marketing their business that I thought would be valuable to my listeners. And so the point is that first we like to hear you, make sure you know your stuff before I tell them all about you. So I already know that you know your stuff, but I like to show them that you know your stuff. So Enoch, one of the things that I thought we would talk about today is that on your website, I mentioned in the introduction, just so you know, you haven't heard it all, but on your website, you have a couple of things that really jumped out and intrigued me. One of them was 12 questions to ask before your meeting so you know what hot buttons to push. And I thought that probably really would correlate a lot to interior designers as well. Do you agree? And secondly, if you do, can we go through those questions?
Absolutely. So I don't know whether I'm going to, like you said, be able to demonstrate any sort of expertise to your listeners here, but we'll just see how it goes.
I'm pretty sure you will.
Yeah, I've been doing this for a few years now, and this is a whole lot of fun. And you know what's really interesting is although as architects sometimes, we kind of have this little thing where we, may perceive that somehow our services are more valuable than some of the other design team. I mean, I've seen that in the industry, but when you really look at what an interior decorator, interior designer, someone who does landscape design or landscape architecture or an architect do, we're all service providers, and what we're selling is our time, and we're selling our design expertise. And so it's the sales process and the marketing of getting new clients it's 100% applicable. It's like exactly the same. You just kind of swap the different words in and out.
Okay, good. And we'll go back to that little, disparaging things that goes on in the industry later.
Here's one thing I find which is really interesting is that when I speak to interior designers, a lot of times they see the architects as the one who are making a lot of money. And then when I talk to the architects, they look at the interior designers as the ones that are making all the money.
Well, and you know what? All right, so we're going to go to this conversation now. That's fine with me. I don't know that in the conversations that I've had with my colleagues that it's so much that they think the architect is making more money or not. But very often, sometimes, it feels like the architect is marginalizing the designer. And that's the reality of it. Now, of course, that doesn't happen in 201. That's not even logical that it would happen 201. But I don't know that I've ever met an architect that felt like the interior designer was marginalizing them. I mean, I'm just saying, I'm doing this 30 years working with both of you animals, architects and designers. And I'm sort of standing there on the sideline listening to the complaints. And so that it exists. You just alluded to it. I don't mean to think that say or infer that you partake in that, but what do you think that is? What do you think what it is? What is the deal with that?
I think ultimately it comes down to, this is getting really deep.
Yeah, we are.
But yeah. I mean, why not go down the rabbit hole right at the start, right? I think it just goes down to human psychology. I think ultimately when people marginalize other people or when they try to run them over with their ego or they don't communicate effectively, a lot of times that's just driven by fear.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And so I think it's driven by fear and insecurity.
Okay, so you're thinking that maybe the architect might have a feeling of this is their baby, they've created it, and now it's in the hands, possibly for the most part, their job is, 80% done, and maybe the designer comes in and starts to say, why was this window here and why was that? And they start to get a little insecure and a little bit like they're being judged. And so then it's this is like talking about middle school people, obviously, right? I mean, that's what you're saying. At the heart of it is fear and insecurity.
Yeah, totally. And so like you said, the fear and insecurity would come into it if another professional like an interior designer comes in and starts to maybe give different perspectives on the things that I said or the design that I did. It takes a very confident sense of self to be able to accept that and say, you know what, that other viewpoint is totally valid and I could totally see what that person's saying and I don't feel threatened by that. But unfortunately, a lot of times we do, So that's the first thing is probably, other professionals coming in and then feeling like maybe we'll be contradicted or we'll be made to look less smart in the eyes of our clients. And then the other thing that I think happens when you think about this dynamic between, the architects and the interior designers, if it goes back to, and I've seen that the high-end interior designers, who are really high-end, who are commanding, top fees and the clients are coming to them, sometimes they will marginalize the architects. But whichever side of the spectrum you're looking at, I think the second thing I would say that causes sort of this, can cause a little bit of friction, is this idea that as an architect, a lot of architects have a very strong sense of design. They have a very strong design process. They're trained throughout school to be very aesthetically focused. And so a lot of times they might feel like the interior designer's design clashes with their architecture. And a lot of times they might not say this openly, but like you said, it's sort of like our baby. Our design ideas, we hold them very near and dear. And, look at Frank Lloyd Wright. I mean, he's the quintessential sort of egotistical architect, where he wanted to design everything, even down to the furniture in the house and the location where they went. And he said if you moved a piece of furniture, you ruined his architecture. Like, he would rather blow up a house than have someone bring in new furniture,
Okay, well, it's very extreme, right?
that is pretty extreme.
Okay.
And, fortunately, I'd say the large majority of architects that I know are very reasonable people. Same thing with the interior designers. But I think that would be one thing that kind of may cause some friction is a difference of design aesthetic.
Okay. And I think both of those insights are very valid and are really very telling. And it seems to me then now we take out of the conversation architect and interior designer, and we just insert human and human, right? The whole basis of every single thing that we do, whether it's architect, interior designer, or it's teacher and parent, or it's student and coach, or whatever it may be, it's all about listening and respecting and giving space, right? So it sounds like to me that an interior designer can possibly be guilty of feeling like maybe they are not as important in the project as the architect. So maybe they come in and have to feel like they have to say the things that they find are wrong in the design or could have been done a different way. And so here you have somebody that might be functioning of a place of insecurity and handles it one way. And then the architect is afraid or also fearful that they're being judged. So they come back another way. And it sounds like if everybody just comes to the playground happy to play and get along, it might be a whole lot better. What
Absolutely.
do you think?
Yeah. And can I give you a tip for interior designers that want to work with architects?
Yeah.
So we run a couple coaching groups in the different companies that I'm involved in, and they're primarily targeted to architects, but every now and then we do have the occasional interior designer, landscape architect join some of our coaching groups. And they kind of get excited about that because here they are swimming in a sea of their basically potential joint venture partners or clients, and so it's pretty good for them to get the feedback. But one of the interior designers, one of the things that the feedback that she got in terms of making herself more, delivering some extra value to get her foot in the door with some architecture firms that she'd like to do work with. We kind of told her, here's a strategy. Why don't you go in very early on in the project, and the other architects in the group were saying this as well, with sort of like a pre-designed service, right? So a lot of times architects are so focused on the building design, the lot constraints, everything that goes into getting that building together, that it takes a lot of mental energy to even try to think about how the interiors is going to work into that, right? And so me as an architect, if I have a qualified interior designer that I can work with who can come in early in the project and has a very clearly defined process that they will walk a client through, that basically kind of like a little needs analysis, where it's not a full-blown interior design package, but if you can come in as an interior designer and say, hey, look, I have this little questionnaire, we're going to meet for an hour, and I'm going to give you this little needs analysis to help you chart out what you should be looking for with your interior design package, that's going to be highly valuable to my clients. And so it helps the architect because it helps give him or her some design criteria going forward. It helps the interior designer because they get the opportunity to get their foot in the door early. And then it helps, of course, the client because they now are going to get a better product because they got the interior designer involved earlier.
I love that. So when you talk about needs analysis, I hear you. You're not talking about, do you want a blue sofa or a green sofa? You're talking about, do you need to sit 4 people to watch a TV program, or do you need to sit 8 people to watch a TV program? Do you need to sit 8 people at a dining table, or do you need a dining table for 15 people? In which case, the architect can understand that and design the spaces in the rooms to accommodate the needs, is what you're saying. Am I correct? Do I get that right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
And things like, how important are sustainable design principles to you on a scale of 1 to 10, so we can decide on, are we going to be going with, 0 or low VOC paint? What kind of, textiles we'll be using, things like that. So that's exactly right.
Right, from minutia to big picture items. I love it. Okay, that's good. I'm so glad we got that off the table. Now we can just, play and have fun for the rest of the conversation.
That's right. So you asked about some meeting questions. You want me to jump into that right now?
Yes, I'd love
LuAnn?
for you to do that. So let me just remind everybody that you have developed 12 questions that you advise your architect clients that are you coach to to explore and ask before the meeting with the client, because it helps you as an architect close the sale, push the hot buttons, respond and react to what your client is looking for. So run through them for us.
Okay, awesome. So first of all, I can't take credit for these questions because these were developed by my partner Richard Petrie, who's known as the world's leading architect marketing coach. So he's one of the he's the coach of our coaching business. He developed this, but I'm very familiar with them because we use them all the time. And so these are actually these 12 points I'm going to get you. This is sort of like a meeting checklist. So these are things that you want to make sure before you go and meet with a client. Okay. Right? This would be like you said. I know you're looking for valuable, actionable information, LuAnn. So right here, if your listeners just want to get out their pen and pencil, I know they can go to your website, download this episode, see the show notes, etc. But here they are, okay?
Okay.
So here's your 12-step meeting checklist. Number 1, make sure all the decision makers are present.
Okay.
Right? Sounds sort of
easy, but
sense.
Not always, right?
Yeah. Well, especially if you're working with a couple, the last thing you want to do is make an entire presentation and then have the person say, well, I need to check with my wife. I need to check with my husband, my partner.
Right.
You want to make sure that the decision makers are present. Number 2, you want to set the scene for the meeting. So early on, you want to establish the rules and lay down, this is how the meeting's going to go, right? Why we're having the meeting, because that's what the client's wondering. What's going on here? What's going to happen? So what this does is, number 1, it establishes you in the position of being the leader in the meeting. And number 2, it allays the client's fears where they feel more comfortable, like they're in the hands of a professional.
Okay. I like
so
these.
So something.
I'm just wondering, should I comment a little? Maybe let's do this. Let me comment a little bit at each one, because 12 is a long time to go back and wait. So I just want to say, first of all, it is obvious to have all decision makers there, but not always easy to do. And just share 1 or 2 tips for a newer, less experienced designer or architect, like in your case, your audience, that gets pushback when they say, oh, okay, I need, both you and your partner there, or both you and your whatever there. And the person on the other end says, oh, he or she can't make it, but it's fine. I've got this. Give us a little bit of advice on how you tactfully push that back. Do you just simply say, nicely once or twice, and then finally just say, I'm not going to do this unless the other person's there?
That's a good question, LuAnn, and thanks for digging into that. So first of all, how do you find out who the decision makers are, right? Because in any couple, there's going to be a dynamic. I'm sure your listeners may have heard it. I've experienced it before. One person says they have full decision-making authority. Once you get into it, then they come back and they say, so-and-so, it's just not really buying into this. Exactly. Not so much. And that can be painful because you may have spent an hour, a couple hours meeting with them, doing a proposal, and all that. Then you have to do it all over again, right?
Yes.
So a simple question to ask at the beginning is, in addition to yourself, who else would need to be involved in this decision-making process to move ahead?
Okay. So okay, I love it. So you know what? That's very clear, because they answer their own question, not unknowingly. And then when you ask for them to both be there, it's sort of, not nice on their part if they say, no, they don't need to be there. Okay. So you basically, I love it. Okay. I love it. It's like an end around. Awesome.
Yeah.
And that should work in almost every situation. I can see that it would. Instead of saying, hey, who else should be here? Just say, who else besides yourself will be involved in making decisions related to this project? And then when they identify that person, because you're not asking who's going to be involved in making decisions for, the paint selection or, this or that. You're asking the general question, and that applies to everything as far as budget approval, yada, yada. I love it. And then you said to set the format of the meeting and to set the ground rules of the meeting. That was number 2. And I like that, because even no matter if it's just the most simplest guideline, we're going to meet at this time, we're going to meet at this location, these are the people who are going to be present from my team, these are the people that, I hope to be present from your person. It just puts you as like you're the in charge role. So you're automatically, before you even all join together, you're establishing yourself as alpha in the room.
That's exactly right. And for a list, I was going to use that term alpha, but I realized some people might not understand. Basically, it goes down to human psychology that, in any sort of selling dynamic, the alpha is the person who's leading. The alpha is the person that's looked to as the mentor, as the teacher, as the person to be followed.
Right.
And in any buying selling relationship, someone will always go into the alpha position. Someone will always go into the beta. What we would say, like the person who's buying and the person who's following. And as a seller or as a professional who's marketing your services, you do not want to fall into the beta position
Never.
because then you're at the mercy of what the buyer wants to do.
Yeah, no, you have to be alpha, period. That's it. And if you don't know how to be alpha, that's your first thing to practice.
There you go. Exactly.
Okay. That's a whole nother show. I should do a show on how to be alpha. Okay.
That would be a lot of fun. Yeah. That's great.
All righty. So how about number 3?
All right. So when we go into number 3, what we're going to do is we're going to continue kind of number 2. We're going to frame the meeting's purpose and the time frame. So we're going to say, look, John and Suzanne, the purpose for this meeting is X. We're going to identify what kind of needs that you guys have. We're going to analyze the plans you guys have, and we're going to discuss the best steps to go forward. Okay. And this meeting I have sketched out right here, 45 minutes. Is that okay with you?
Nice. I love it. I love when you get agreement. I love that. That's my favorite thing to do. Tell everybody what's happening and then say, is that good with you? Love it.
Yep.
Okay. All righty. We're moving on.
Okay. All right. So then what you want to move into is you want to understand the current situation. We call this the now. So you want to ask the now by asking background questions. Basically tell me about your current situation right now. What's motivating you to reach out and to sit in this meeting with me right now? And they're going to say things like, well, we're doing a remodel. Whatever brought them to that point, they're going to kind of describe that.
Okay. And this is where it's extremely important to listen, because these are the things I'm going to just put words in your mouth and guess it, because these are the things that at some point you are then going to refer back to and bring them back to that emotion, that feeling that caused them to be in this meeting in the first place, right?
100%.
Okay.
Yep. Listening is key here.
Yes, yeah. And the thing is, I have to say, I think that we're basically describing a sales process, what I love. But
Yep.
but what I have to say about it is that when you execute this, not you, but when my listeners, when they go about executing this, if you're not skilled at it and you haven't done it before, the listening part is literally as critical as knowing what kinds of questions to ask. Because if you simply have your questions down pat and you're thinking and moving on to the next, question or the next thing on the agenda while your potential client is answering, you may as well not have asked the questions, because that's your nuggets that you're looking for in there, so that later when there's an objection or there's this, you can come back and say, oh, I understood that the whole, that your goal was this, and you've reworded it a different way, but you go right back to their information they gave you. Do you agree?
That is so true. And I find that people that haven't had a lot of experience doing this is the one part that it's easy to mess up. Mm-hmm. When you listen, you have to be comfortable with silence.
Right.
And it's tough. It can be tough.
Well, it's a learned skill. It totally is. And the thing of it is it's not just silence for the second or two until somebody speaks. That's a more difficult skill to learn. When you ask a question and the other person is completely silent, it's definitely very important to stay silent until they speak, because they eventually will. They'll be eventually more uncomfortable with the silence than you are. But also, I also noticed that a lot of newer salespeople will, when the other person, when their potential client does start to speak, they'll jump in and start to finish the sentence. Stay quiet through until they're done speaking, because it's usually, how many of us, our first 2 or 3 sentences out of our mouth, we're still trying to formulate in our mind what the heck we're talking about or what our goal is. Well, why did I set a meeting with an architect? Well, let's see, I thought it was time to do renovation to this and that. And then finally, then you come to, and I've always wanted a master bedroom suite. You know what I mean? Like, that might be the 4th thing they say, right, yeah. Enoch?
Yeah, and if you miss that, you miss out on all the nuggets. And so, here's just a little case study. I mean, I've done this before, and as you sit there, even when they finish talking, if you can give it 3 or 4 seconds, because what will happen sometimes is they'll want to fill that space by continuing to talk, and you'll get some additional, really valuable information out of that.
Definitely agree. Okay. All right. So we are having a very meeting of the mind situation right now. This is awesome. Thank you. So where are we headed next?
All right. So we understood the now. We understand their current situation. And the next thing we want to do, number 5 here, is understand the client's goals and objectives. Basically, what do they want to get? What are they going for? What's their vision of the future?
Okay. And you want it, again, in their language. You want to know what their dreams are, right? Do they want, like I said, a master bathroom with 16 shower heads or whatever it is they're talking about, right?
Exactly. And you want to really get, so here's a little pro tip as well. You want to get the emotional impact of what they're going for. And we can talk about that a little bit later. But when you talk about their goals and objectives, you really want to get to how they're going to feel in the space, because that's ultimately what everyone's doing, is trying to feel a certain way.
Exactly. And then also, too, is this part of this tip, or is this a tip coming? To me, also understanding their emotional goals and objectives, but I also am looking for cues when I'm wanting goals and objectives to the way they want to work. Are they somebody that wants to be informed on the entire process, or are they like me? Like, just give me the broad once we come to a plan, and once I've decided on you and you are my person, whether you're my architect, you're my doctor, you're my designer, whatever you are, then I just want the action. I just, let me know every 2 weeks that you did these 10 things on a checklist. I don't want the minutia. So there are ways that potential clients express this to us. Are you looking for that in this step, Enoch, or are you looking is that coming up in a different step?
I usually find that kind of later, because this is just sort of an initial kind of like client qualification meeting, but you can almost qualify them at the beginning, and you're going to know, depending on your clientele, a lot of them are going to be very similar. If you're dealing with very high net worth individuals,
right.
You already know how they work. You know that they don't want to be bothered with the minutia. They just want the executive report. If you deal with people who are on more of a budget and maybe they're, kind of do-it-yourselfers, then they're going to be wanting to go with you to the store to pick out all the fixtures and the furniture.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But I also think communication is different no matter – it doesn't go according to budget for me. I feel like there's some people like myself that require very little communication and require just the facts. I don't need you to say, hi, how are you, and how was your weekend on every email. Just start talking to me. It's fine. You know what I'm saying? But then you have other clients that would be offended by an approach like that. And I can go right there with one interaction with somebody. Especially, and I'm talking about if I am the consumer, I can go right there in one interaction. I don't need the salesperson or the person that I'm looking to take their services on, to every single time be all about how was my weekend and what is my day and blah, 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 blah. But, other people find offense at it. So I don't know. I just thought it was interesting because I'm looking for those cues when I'm asking them about, their objectives and their goals. Just in the way they describe it, I'm looking and picking up those cues. So, okay. So that's 5. What are we doing with 6?
Well, in number 6, you want to be able to ask your success criteria questions. So you want to know how they would know if they had achieved success working with you. So this is sort of helping them, put them in a mental state where they can imagine the future, and having them imagine, okay, Janice and Tom, or Tommy or David, if we were working together for the next 18 months and we pulled off a successful project, tell me what you would have to be seeing to look back and be absolutely thrilled with the fact that you and I were able to work together. What would you be seeing in your project? And just talk to me about that vision.
I love that one. For everybody listening, if you missed Adam Urbanski's show, Power Talk Friday, a couple of weeks ago, this is exactly what Adam said too. So that is so awesome. Tell us some of the things. Just take a minute here and tell us some of the things that your potential clients have said to you in this step that you can recall and you remembered making note of. Like, what types of things should people be thinking about they're listening for?
Well, a lot of times what you're going to be listening for is sort of lifestyle type of questions. Like, there's going to be certain key phrases where someone might say, I pull up in my car, I walk into my house, and I just have a feeling of awe, and I feel some achievement when I look around and I see the beautiful furnishings of my home.
Okay.
Like, that might be a really powerful thing. And then you could pick up on that. Oh, he or she mentioned achievement. So achievement and success must be important to that person.
Okay. And do people also talk about the process here? Because if you asked me that question, I might give you all the stuff that I want the end thing to look like. But I would have said to you things like, I would like for the project to run smoothly. I would like for the project to run on budget. I would like for there to be communication anytime something is going to be dramatically delayed or over budget. I would like choices if something has to go over budget or delayed. Like, those are that's what I would hit you with, because I'm that crazy lady. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like, I'm not worried about I'm assuming if I'm hiring you, it's going to look amazing. So do you find that clients say those kinds, like if you ask me what denotes a successful project, that's where my brain goes. If you've met clients that have been that, I have to believe in your long career that you have.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you sound like an ideal client because you come in and you understand how the process works. We don't need to tell that to you. So that's like the perfect kind of client who actually responds that way, like understands not only that they want to have something on time and on budget. Frankly, I think a lot of people, they don't even know what on time and on budget is,
Mm-hmm.
But yes, they will come out with those things. Everything you just said, they'll give you what's important about that is they'll give you their picture of what a successful product is.
Yes.
So LuAnn,
Just
as you
ask
mentioned,
them.
your picture is going to be different than someone else's picture,
Exactly.
but you just have to sit there, ask the question, and then just listen because they're going to define for you basically the criteria that they're going to use to choose their interior designer or their architect.
And I'll just share with you too, Enoch, that Adam actually on his podcast, he is a marketing mentor, the Millionaire Marketing Mentor. He's really quite amazing if you haven't heard of him. But one of the things that he said in regard to that step was that if a potential client enumerates 3, 4, 5 things that will in their mind be the way a successful project looks, and it doesn't align with the way you work, the way you operate, the things that you like to do. He said that's a perfect criteria there for weeding out the people who you will not have a successful project with. It's like somebody saying, the perfect thing I love to do on a date is to go bowling, and somebody's saying, I'm never going bowling. Like, stop it. If you don't bring me to a hotel and serve me champagne, I'm not going out with you. So it's a perfect criteria for figuring that out. Do you agree with that?
That is a very wise tip. It is.
He is
very
smart
spoken
man.
with a lot of wisdom. That's so true. And one of the traps that we as designers, and I'm going to lump us all together as designers, that we fall into is we get so fixated on the design of the project that we lose sight of the fact that we're working with people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. And his name is Adam, is that right?
Adam Urbanski. Yes.
Adam
it's
Urbanski,
an
right.
amazing, he is just so brilliant. And of course, you're echoing a lot of his things. So clearly you're pretty brilliant yourself.
Well, and the point that Adam's making there is that, I'll put words in his mouth. I'll put words in my own mouth. The reason why I feel that would be important is because if you get so fixated on doing this wonderful project, you're enraptured and you're in love with the idea of designing this cool building, but you ignore and overlook the fact that this person's not going to be a fit, then you've just signed yourself up for a couple of years of living hell.
That's
and
right.
You're going to look back and you're going to say it totally was not worth it. And so it does take some confidence and it takes some security to be able to recognize that up front. But that is very important. LuAnn, I'm so glad you brought that up.
No, and it's true because you know that these projects do go on for several months, if not years. And when you have completed a project, if anybody listening has ever been in a situation where they noticed the red flag at the beginning and ignored it and then pursued it and then completed it and at the end went, oh my goodness, that was brutal. You know you can identify the moment at the beginning where you ignored your gut intuition on it and plowed through. And the thing is, I agree with you. People plow through in every business, not just interior design and architecture. People plow through usually out of need. They plow through because the pipeline isn't filled, or they plow through because the checkbook is empty, or they plow through because maybe the project is prestigious, or they plow through just because it's the way the client the design is going to go, and they can see the vision that they want is so aligned with their vision that they don't want to say no. But none of it trumps a positive, successful relationship. And to your point, number 6, if you ask a potential client to tell them what would a successful completed project look like, feel like, sound like, if you can't deliver that, run for the hills. Find the one that will work for you, right?
Yep. And what you'll find if you do use that and you say, hey, look, I don't think it's going to be a fit between us. Here's some other people I can recommend. What you'll usually find is they'll actually chase you even more.
Exactly. That's true. But then
It'll
unless
be
they
crazy.
can Then you got to be strong, unless it was just a little nudge, and then maybe you've wrestled them into line and been able to reestablish some ground rules for success. But
Yep.
Okay, good. All righty. So what are we looking at for number 7?
All right. So as you mentioned, this is a basic framework for marketing and selling. These are specifics that we've developed, but there's a lot of other frameworks out there. But number 7 that I'm going to throw out there is just ask what it would mean to them to have achieved their objectives. Very simple question. What will that mean to you to have achieved that?
Okay.
Okay.
So what are you looking for here? We've already established what their objectives are. You're just looking for the way they express it, the language, and start to get to know their personality, and also to learn what is important to them and from an emotional standpoint.
That's right. We're trying to discover their emotional drivers here.
Okay. I like that, because that does that's an emotional question. So it's going to bring emotional answers. I love it. Okay. And listen. Okay. All righty.
So number 8, ask their current plans to achieve their objectives and to what degree they're already on track. So this is kind of where you get to analyze what they're already doing and how far off track they are. I mean, this is where, you don't want to find out at this state. Look, when you're doing this meeting, if this is a sit-down meeting, you don't want to find out at this point that, like, oh my goodness, we needed to pick an interior designer, 2 months ago and this whole project's on fire. You don't want to find that out now. So,
okay.
But what you do want to find out at this stage is, what obstacles do they have that they're worried about? What challenges do they have that they think that they can overcome? And are they on track? Do they have a lot of time for this process?
Okay.
Going on.
You probably at this question might get answers like, you're the third architect that's been on the project and all the others are numbnuts and you're the third designer, right? Like, these are where hot buttons are, like challenge issues are going to come up. Things like that could happen. Okay. Yep. And if you find that that's sort of the answer, well, we've worked with 1 or 2 other designers so far and we can't really seem to get the project on track and moving, then that requires another whole set of questions, I would think, to get to the bottom of, why there has been a problem, because it goes back to the number 6 question, is because another designer wasn't able to be successful for these people doesn't mean you're not going to be successful. So you can't just assume because they've worked with 1 or 2 designers in the past and it wasn't a positive experience. It could be because they were not a good fit, and now this client is ultimately possibly in you finding the right fit. Do you agree?
Yep.
Okay.
100%.
Okay. Awesome. Love it. All right. Where are we moving to now?
All right, cool. So what we want to do next is, so we already discovered some emotional drivers there. We want to ask them about the consequences if they don't meet their objectives.
Okay. So do you mean things like, we only have rented a house for 3 months and you've got to get this done? Or what kinds of things are we potentially thinking about here?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to depend on what everyone's going to answer this question differently. However, what we're really getting at here is their motivation, their degree of motivation to actually do this project and follow through on it. Because if they say, look, our mother-in-law's coming to stay and we absolutely need to have this finished in the next 3 months, then they're highly, highly motivated to move ahead. If they say, well, you know what, we're just kind of looking at options right now and it doesn't seem like there's a lot of pain attached. Like, yeah, if this project doesn't come through, that'll be a disappointment, but it's not really that big of a deal. Then that's sort of a red flag.
Okay. I like it, because of somebody that has a baby on the way, or like you said, visiting relatives that are coming for a long period of time, or a relative that's maybe disabled and needs to move in with them, or elderly. So these are hot buttons, hot things that will encourage the client to keep on track with communication and approvals and paying and all those other things. That's what you're describing.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, exactly.
Very good. I love it. All right.
And the other thing here is, this is something where, humans are more motivated by avoiding pain than by moving towards pleasure.
Right.
It's really unfortunate, but that's the fact of the matter. We like to think that we're motivated by feeling pleasure, but what we want to do is avoid pain. And here's just a quick example to give you that. I mean, how many people listening right now have set a goal to get up in the morning, go for a run, go do some jogging, go do some exercising, and then that goal has failed again and again and again and again.
Because it's very nice in our beds in the morning.
That's right. Right?
Exactly.
And
right.
it's going to be painful if we get out, right? So they're avoiding pain, even though there's a long-term pleasure there of having a healthier body, maybe having an expanded lifespan, feeling more energetic. The immediate pain is what keeps us there in the bed, because we're like, man, that's gonna be painful.
Right,
I gotta put on my shoes. I gotta sweat. I gotta go up that hill. And that just the thought of it makes me want to stay here.
That's right. That's right.
So by identifying the consequences of them not achieving their objectives, what we're really identifying there, LuAnn, is we're identifying the pain that's attached to their project. And if they get stuck along the way, or if they're having difficulty committing, we can just remind them of the consequences of not doing this project, and that can be very effective to helping them to make a decision.
Mm-hmm. Okay. It is. It's an excellent example of a way to do that. Unfortunately, I know, like you and everybody listening, we've all been in the situation. I had it just recently. The objective was out there. There was a timeline. There's no question about it. But you can't get agreement on the interim things that had to happen on the timeline. And it didn't matter how many times in an email I documented that I can't move forward until this happens. The timeline is in jeopardy. Finally, honest to God, week out from the original date, I finally get information I need to now make draperies that take 6 weeks to make, and asked me if I was going to meet the original deadline date. Like, can I keep a straight face for that? I cannot.
Love
I
it.
cannot.
Love it.
Like, I'm just staring at the email and the little cursor thing blinking, going, okay, LuAnn, you have to be nice.
Yeah, you're like, today is going to be a good day.
It's like, that's a ridiculous question. How do I answer that? But it's true. If you understand the timeline, and you only can do what you can do, but you can do it if you know what the motivation and the pain points are. You can do the best to tackle and remind all the way along the way. This is in jeopardy. Your pain point is going to be bigger. Okay.
Yep. And have them keep that front and center, because you're doing them a service by helping them connect. Because a lot of times people, they won't connect like you said, they won't connect their current decisions to the consequences of those decisions.
You're right. That's a great way to enunciate it. They're not connecting their current decisions or lack of decisions to consequences. So that's a good way to put it. So I probably should have put that in one of my emails. These lack of decisions are having consequences. So, all righty. That's awesome. So what do you have for 10?
All right, cool. So on number 10, you want to ask for the timing questions.
Okay.
When do they want to get their new results by? So this will help you map out the project timeline, make sure it's realistic.
Okay. And that also for a lot of these similar reasons. What I love is that a lot of the things you're discussing, anyone listening might think, well, I kind of ask all 3 of these rolled up into one. But what I like is that if you separate it out, it's like what I just said earlier in the conversation. I love to state what we're doing and get agreement on it. So don't mix them all into one and say, what does your completed project look like and what's the timing? Don't put it into one question, because you're going to get one answer and the other one is going to be left flying out into the universe. You're never going to get it. So I love that your questions are very specific, and they might feel like they overlap, but they actually are each speaking to a different emotional trigger, like you're saying. So very good. What's 11 and 12?
Well, number 11, then after we have all that background information, we want to kind of map out the roadmap to success with their options, right? And so this is kind of where we take all the information that they gave them, and this is where we bring our professional training to bear and our experience in the past. We take a look at their current situation. We take a look at where they want to get. We identify the gap between where they are now, where they want to get, kind of talk about some of the obstacles, and then we give a recommendation for the next best step.
Okay. I love it. And is that's 11 and 12, the roadmap and the recommendation?
Nope, that's 11.
Okay.
Number 12 is if you feel like it's a fit, if you feel like you'd like to work on this project and with these people, you want to book the next few meetings in the calendar.
Okay. Right then and there, while everybody's feeling warm and lovey, right?
That's right. Exactly.
Okay. These are really some very, very, very good tips. I love like I said a moment ago, the I always have a hard time with this word. How do you say it? Specificity.
Specificity. That is a tongue twister.
Yeah, I should just avoid that word clearly because I don't think I've ever said it the first time right. But I do love the clarity. How's that? That's a nicer word, easier
That's
for
a good
me.
one.
Clarity of the questions, because they really do help you as the designer or architect to arrive at some touch points to go back to, not only for this initial meeting and for your presentation of your letter of agreement, but also throughout the whole project. Now you know, like you were calling it, the emotional gauging or the emotional triggers of the motivators of the things that matter most to your client. And look, for a successful project, we want to hit the things that matter most to our client, right? That's how we hit home runs, right?
Absolutely.
I love it. I love it a lot. Now, you mentioned something else before we went through that terrific list there that I thought was very interesting. You mentioned how I hadn't thought about this when I invited you here, by the way, but it seemed like, wow, that's an extra little bonus. I thought when I invited you onto the show that your information would cross over to the audience. And I thought also that when I invited you on, that even your workshops and the different products that you have, both your free resources and your paid coaching resources, would have some value and cross over to the designers. But you know what I didn't think about? I didn't think about if a designer was part of one of your coaching programs and the contacts that designer would make with architects. That's a pretty interesting little scenario there.
Yeah.
Yes.
Kind of ridiculous.
I like that a lot because, like you said, if a designer can be involved, instead of the project being client and architect, and then client architect builder, and then client architect designer, the third one through the door, if the designer can be in a situation where he or she has good working relationships with the architects, then they can start to build projects together. And you get past all that craziness and you come to a point where as professionals you respect each other and you know each other, what each can bring to the table. And like you said, it sounds like to me that when an architect does encounter an interior designer who's well-schooled and talented, that they're an asset to the project for the architect. You seem to have been saying. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. I mean, there's so much value that an interior designer can bring to an architectural project. I mean, it's just a huge amount of value. And so I would just tell all the interior designers out there to be confident in the value that you do have, because it's there. It's huge. If you need help identifying it, reach out or keep on listening to LuAnn's podcast, because that's what this is all about, helping run a better business. But yeah, the value's there, and I do 100% believe that there's huge value that can be added by a team. Absolutely, especially the interior designers.
Now, give us a tip or two. Obviously, we just, figured out that little backdoor way into meeting a lot of architects in a very intimate and very like a non-confrontational and very camaraderie sort of environment. But let's talk about that as a great idea for an interior designer who's listening. Maybe they're younger, they're starting out, maybe they're seasoned, who knows. But what would you say, having, yourself being an architect and working with architects and teaching them all the time, how would a designer best cold call and reach out to an architect and say, I think they could say, hey, I heard about Enoch Sears and he thinks this is a great idea. But beyond that, what are some of the things that if you received a cold email or a cold phone call from a designer, how would they best express in a short, quick, non-crazy pants way that they'd like to meet with you and let you, speak with you about the possibility of working together in some fashion?
Okay. That's a fantastic question. I'm going to have to think about this through because it's okay, let's just take it through the process, right?
Okay.
So I'm going to put myself in the architect's position.
Right.
If I get an email from an interior designer, hey, Enoch, I'm a local interior designer, like your work, love what you do, thought we might be able to collaborate on some projects. Are you available for coffee, next week, Tuesday morning, or the week after Monday?
Mm-hmm.
If I'm very busy, I'm probably going to put them off I'm going to say, yeah, I'm going to ignore the email just because I don't have time. I might respond and say, hey, I'm kind of booked up. If I have some space in my schedule, then I will, because as an architect, I'm always looking for people who can add to my project team, right? Because not every project will be a fit for the kind of people who I work with. And so I think that you can get some mileage just with that very direct, very cold approach, which is, hey, by the way, I'm here in town. I've been doing this for a while. I love your work. Don't talk about yourself so much. Talk about what they do.
Right.
I love what you've been doing. And I saw the X project that you did. It looked great. I'm interior designer. Would love to get together and see how I can help you in your business if there's any opportunity for collaboration there. You'll get a certain response rate just from that very cold pitch, right?
Right.
Now, if you want to increase your chances for connecting with people, maybe architects that work on higher end projects that may be a little bit tougher nuts to crack because they're already working with. They already have their designers. They already have their builders. They already have their project team that they're kind of their favorites, or they may do the interior design themselves. Then you're going to have to come up with some sort of offer that adds some value to that person, right?
Okay.
And one way to position that, and I guess I'll kind of explain what I mean by offer, but so when we think about an offer, if you think about what do architects really want at the end of the day, if you can figure out what an architect really wants and you can give that to him or her, help them get that, then game over, home run. You just got yourself a killer strategy for meeting a whole lot of architects.
You going to tell us?
Well, absolutely.
Secret sauce.
Lay down as much value as I can here. Look, so yeah, and it's going to ring a bell. Look, what architects really want.
What you're saying is, what is the pain point for an architect? I'm curious to know what it is.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I'll start just at the highest level. Architects, what do they want? They want to work on better, more interesting projects. Okay.
Yep.
That's probably number one for an architect, is he or she wants to work on more interesting, more challenging, more high profile projects. Okay. That's every architect's dream. That's why they went into design school.
Right.
80% of architects were like design focused. That's what they want. Okay. They want more clients that fit that profile. They want more project and lead opportunities.
Okay.
And, behind that, they probably want to increase their fees.
Right. Sound like designers, by the way.
Well, that's what I was saying. I'm saying this is going to sound very familiar because they're probably the same exact needs. But when we look at the third one, which is fees, a lot of times we might think that's number one, but it's actually not, because architects and interior designers I've found are a lot of times they want to make the money, but they're also design driven. They're in it because they're passionate about the field. Okay. So what we think about as an interior designer is, okay, what can I do to help certain architects that I want to connect with achieve any one of these three goals? Right. So, you could do some co-branded marketing with them.
Okay.
Right? You could say, hey, let's go in together on a flyer that you can put your information on one side. I'll put my information on the back side. Let's send that out to both of our lists and see if we can drum up some business. My past clients, right? You could hold a seminar together where you hold a workshop on, how to not die from toxic gases, or, in your next building, sustainable design tips or something, and do something design focused, or something like, even how to rearrange your furniture for maximum impact in your space, what colors to use, what curtains to use, what window treatments to use when you develop your space, what kind of lighting. If you can put together just a little workshop and then invite an architect or two architects to come to that, participate as that as well.
I like these ideas.
So those are kind of two things that are like, these are like co-marketing kind of ideas, like joint venture where you can reach out to them. Another thing you can do is if you develop a small needs analysis package and you tell the architect that, say for instance, like some architects that I've spoken with and who do design build and everything, a lot of times they find it difficult to charge for the interior design services.
Right.
So here's the deal. They end up doing it, but they definitely don't do as thorough of a job as an interior designer might do a lot of times. And the reason for that is because their fees are focused mostly on the construction documents, the design of the architecture, et cetera. And so, can you as an interior designer come in there and can you make it easier for an architect to charge more for the interior design package? So if you can show an architect how having you on their team will make them more money,
That's nice.
They're going to be very excited to talk to you, because if you hone your sales skills, if you know the questions to ask, if you can close a client, if you can show how you are valuable, and then if you can show an architect how presenting, like, hey, look, Mr. or Mrs. Architect, introduce me to your client, and I will help close them on your project. I will help close them on a design package that you can then wrap into your fees, and you can upcharge because you're the overseeing professional. That's another way to help them make more money.
That's a great suggestion, because what you're saying is that a lot of times the architect gets roped into making many of the interior suggestions at no fee because of the size of the project, and their fees are wrapped into the other. So they're not going to stand there and say, well, I'm not going to tell you what color granite to use. All right, here, use this granite. But the converse, as you're saying, is in the presentation, part of what the architect does and part of what he presents is, this is it's just like, this is the electrical, this is the millwork, this is the interior package. I like that. That's very nice.
I mean, I'll give you one example from an architect who's in in our highest level mastermind program. He does very high end design build projects down around Beverly Hills, Brentwood area, so very top class projects, and he's very affordable. And as we were looking at his project process, he's been doing this for years, but he was almost throwing in the interior design as like a bundled service with his architecture. And he was looking at the other fees other architects, other designers, other builders were charging, and he was saying, a lot of times they're charging like 3 times more. How can they possibly get that? Well, once we broke out the interior design package as a separate package, it's like, okay, now I can see how I can then charge separately for these different services.
Right. Don't
and
give it away.
Increase the bottom line. Give a better project, to the end user. And so that's one example of when I say an offer. If your interior designers can go out there, so here's an alternate phone conversation, right? Mm-hmm. Someone calls me up, hey Nick, I'm a local interior designer, and I've been following your work. It looks fantastic. I really love X project. Listen, I've been working with architects, and I have a method to help them increase their product revenues by 10% without doing any extra work and get a better project. Would you have 15 minutes when I could tell you about this?
Right. That's a slam dunk. Right.
Yeah. I mean, what are they going to say? They're going to say, no,
I don't
thank
want to
you.
make 10%
I don't want don't want better projects, and I don't want 10% increase in my revenues.
I like being out here sucking wind, right? No, I think that's awesome. I love all of these ideas. And, I love the idea of, certainly, you have to have some chops. You have to be a seasoned, I would think, to some extent, to approach and be the one who says, I can bring value to your projects, and here's my needs analysis approach. And, you can make me the design services part of something under your umbrella you can charge for. So you can't present this to an architect and you really haven't executed projects on your own where you have command of executing a project, because, the architect in one project is going to see that you're not organized, you don't have your systems, and you've now created a bad thing instead of in a place where it was neutral and nothing existed, right? So maybe make sure you've been through and be seasoned and have some sea legs. But I also think if you find a also brand new architect, then you can almost feel like you could have a level conversation, couldn't you? You could say, look, I think that your work is great, but I see that you're a hot minute out of school like I am. And why don't we join forces together and do some of, like you said, some workshops and make a flyer together and things like that? I think it speaks to both ends of the capabilities of the designers listening. I mean, I feel like, do you?
Yeah, absolutely. And you hit the nail on the head. Ultimately, you and I can come up with a lot of tactics, and all the ones we've discussed are great. However, if the interior designers, if they just take on the mindset of just remembering what's in it for the other person,
right,
that's going to go miles.
Yes.
So even if someone's fresh out of school, if you go to an architect, if you're able to identify that, as architects, it's kind of painful and annoying to do furniture layouts. Like maybe some architecture firms don't do furniture layouts on their plans. That could be a service that you could offer to an architect that say, hey, look, I'm going to give me your CAD blocks. We'll go ahead and we'll do a furniture layout. We'll just make sure that your designs fit with the furniture in the room. that could be something simple that someone could do. That would be a good offer.
Even a younger interior designer could do that. That's awesome.
Yep.
That's terrific. I love it. I think they're great. It's a lot of great tips. I swear to goodness, I have a list in front of me of 20 more things, but it's been an hour and I know you're a busy man. So I just think that it's awesome what you're doing. I love it. I love how actionable your advice is. And I do believe that it crosses right on over to us. And plus, I love the insights for the crossing over of the two fields that you shared with us. Before you go, Enoch, please share with everybody how they find you. You have your podcast, you have the Business of Architecture podcast, you have Architects Marketing. Tell us all about what you're doing.
Sure. I would invite you to go listen to the Business of Architecture. Search for Business of Architecture on iTunes. You can go ahead and subscribe to that. You're going to get a weekly podcast interview. And I interview not just architects. I've also had interior designers on there. I've had interior design experts. I've had landscape architects. We have business consultants, very similar to your podcast, I have a feeling, LuAnn. So that would be stop number one is the Business of Architecture podcast on iTunes. It's like, I'm a big fan of podcasts, LuAnn. I think it's so great that you're doing this because it's one of the best forms of education in terms of improving ourselves and improving our results. You get to sit there while you're working in your downtime and just consume. I mean, I don't want to sound too overstating what we just went through here, but some great information, things I wish I would have known in the past.
So true, so true. And then you also tell us the other.
Number two. So here's something, I'm just going to frame this really quickly with a little story.
Okay.
A couple months ago, we ran our Architect Business Development Summit in New York City, which is our yearly event where we talk about marketing, sales, business development, growing a practice. And one of our star clients, actually Richard Petrie's star client, Mona Quinn, she's an architect based out of New Zealand. And he said that he was having a conversation with her, and she said something to him that was interesting. She said, you know what, Richard, I would say that these two questions are responsible for me winning almost all of my projects that I've won. Okay, and so there's two questions. And these are two questions that Richard Petrie has and that he teaches. He calls it his mind cannon. And okay, and now we've already given you a lot of questions, a lot of things you can use in your meeting, but what I'd like to do is offer you guys a little bribe. You can get these two questions that Mona Quinn said were responsible for her landing a majority of her projects completely free just by giving us your email address. We'll send you more interesting information about sales and marketing, but the way to do that would be to go to Arch Marketing, so it's ARCH marketing.org. And then we'll just put a link up there, a well-designed business. So that would be all one word, no spaces. So it'd be archmarketing.org, not com, .org/ a well-designed business. And what I'll do there is I'll make sure that we have a PDF download of the questions and frameworks we just went through right now. And we'll also have the two questions along with an explanation of them that Mona Quinn said were so powerful that Richard Petrie calls them his mind cannon. So how's that?
I love that. It's very intriguing. I have to say, you have me. So
okay.
I will be downloading it like everybody else.
Sounds good. I'll send it to you.
Thank you. I have to say, I really do appreciate your taking your time to be with us. I admire what you're doing very much. Like I said, I'm a listener to your show. There was a show that I just listened to recently, and the name of the gentleman is going to escape me, but he is the person at Gensler who's in charge of the South region, Philadelphia, Virginia, D.C., Miami. Do you remember his name? That was such a good interview. It was. Oh,
that's yeah. And you know what's this is really interesting, LuAnn. I'm glad you brought that up. Because the person you speak of is actually, he's the principal in charge of the Southeast region
of Gensler.
Of Gensler.
Right.
And of course, for those who don't know, Gensler is the largest architecture firm in the world.
Yes.
And in the world. And they started out as a interiors firm back in I think the 50s or the 60s.
Wow.
But what's really interesting about this is that Kenneth Baker,
that's his name,
who I interviewed on the show, is actually an interior designer. That is his background.
wow,
So he's
yes.
actually not an architect. He's an
Isn't
interior designer, and he's risen through the ranks of Gensler to now where he is like number 2 kind of in command. They have a management committee, and he's right up near the top. And so
I'm not
he has
surprised.
yeah.
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 No, I have to say, I'm not surprised. He is a really cool man. I mean, he's so smart and so knowledgeable, but you get a vibe when you listen to somebody. And I was just like, okay, this is an awesome human being. And his interview was so good. You did such a good job with him. And he just was warm, and he shared his advice and he shared his tips. And he just, I'm not surprised that he's risen to the top in such a, amazing international firm, because I just suggest everyone to listen to that interview. It was really very impressive.
Oh, thank you, LuAnn.
Yes.
I'm glad you brought that up. That was a fantastic. I really enjoyed doing that one.
Yeah. So
Kenneth is a remarkable individual.
yeah, you can hear it with people on there, so it's nice, and you could see he was interested and just happy to share, just like you were today with us, and I genuinely appreciate it. And so I hope that all my buddies out there go over and find your podcast and they download your little giveaways there, and of course I will have them in the show notes and on our website. You can get that information too. So thank you so much, Enoch, for being with us today.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure. And as always, carpe diem, LuAnn.
I'm so proud to tell you that our podcast is sponsored by Cravat Inc., featuring CuratedCravat.com. You know, because I've told you a million times, that I've been a Cravat customer since the early 1980s. And the truth is, I can't say enough great things about Cravat Inc., except to tell you that now there's CuratedCravat.com. At CuratedCravat.com, they work so hard to source high-quality items for you and for your clients. And they really do make it very easy to find that unique piece to complete your interior design project. Do you know what a couple of my favorite parts are? First, it's trade only. That's right, they have your back at Cravat Inc. Second, they have no minimums. Isn't that awesome? And third, the ordering process is a snap. Design, click, delivered. It's so easy. You need to visit CuratedCravat.com today and be sure to use your discount code CK Podcast. You get to use that code for one order and you will get 10% off that entire order. CK Podcast at CuratedCravat.com. So what did you think? Pretty cool, right? I thought it would be a good idea to have Enoch on the show, and I hope that you did too. I think it's pretty clear that he has some very terrific ideas on marketing, and it's also pretty clear that they directly correlate to running an interior design firm as well. Some of the big takeaways from the episode is that, number one, business is business, no matter what we do and where we do it, right? And that the underlying principles for good business go across any type of business. Second is sales. Sales is critical to every business. It is the lifeblood. It is the thing that fills your pipeline. And I know that it might sometimes feel like an icky word to some people. It might feel like, no, I'm a designer, I'm not a salesperson. But every single day, I promise you, you are selling your ideas to your potential clients, whether it's selling them on you and your firm in order to close them and sign a letter of agreement, or it's selling them on the sofa and the placement of that sofa that you know and feel is best for them. So it is what you are doing, and the better you can become at it and the more adept that you can become at it, number one, it doesn't feel like a process anymore, and number two, the more success you will have. So I have to encourage you to go to Enoch's website and download those 12 steps, those 12 questions that he went through with us. And don't forget, that's at www.archmarketing.org/a-well-designed-business, ARCH marketing.org/a-well-designed-business. I would genuinely appreciate it if you would use that code. Of course, you can get there without it. I'm not getting any money. I'm not getting any kickback. It's a free download, but it is so nice for other podcasters to see that the influence that another podcast has to them and to their community. And so it's just helpful for me. And I would be grateful if you were to go and investigate his products and services, that you would use that code so he's aware of it. Okay, so back to these 12 questions. Here's what I have to say about these 12 questions. They are truly designed. Him and his partner, Rich Petrie, did a bang-up job on really devising these questions to get at the heart of the answer, to get at the way we described it in the podcast, the way they have been designed. They automatically get the client to talk back to you in emotion words. And that's how you close a sale. You understand the motivations, the challenges, the pain spots of your potential client. And if you can understand those things, then you know how you can work toward closing down that sale. And so they're very important. And this is like the guesswork has been taken out of it. Honest to God, I mean, it is a blueprint for getting and earning this information out of your clients. And the thing is, don't ever look at this as like a car salesman type thing, because it is true. A truly successful sale is a win-win for both sides. You know, I understand that your end goal is to create a beautiful product, a beautiful environment, a beautiful room for your client. And you can only do that if you truly understand them. So if you have any bad taste in your mouth over the word sales or salesmanship, do yourself a favor and move on from that. Just put it aside and understand that a truly successful salesperson has fulfilled the needs of the person that they're serving. And that's the way I look at sales. I don't look at it like I'm trying to convince you to take anything that I have for sale. I look at it like I'm trying to learn exactly what it is that I can do for you, that is valuable for you, that you will pay for me to do for you, that will make your situation, life, experience, whatever it is, better. Okay, so wrap your brain around it that way, and then maybe it takes some of the stigma out for you. Okay, and these questions are literally, like I said, you don't even have to think about it. Tailor them to your wording, whatever you want, but leave the intent of the questions there that they have already so carefully crafted for you. And then the other final thing is listen. Huge. Number one thing you can do in every single interaction with your client is to listen to them. Let them speak until they're done speaking, and they will tell you exactly how to serve them, how to thrill them, how to earn their trust, how to earn their business, and how to earn their referrals. Listen, 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 okay? So I really, really enjoyed this episode. I hope you did too. I really think that Enoch does a great job, and definitely head over to his podcast and check out what he's doing over there, because he's pretty brilliant, I have to say. All righty. So, we have to give you the updates on where and when I'm going to be and what's happening. So Las Vegas market is around the corner. If you're listening to this, it's about 3 weeks away, and I will be there. I will be on Monday doing the event at the Noir showroom with Designer Inc., and it's going to be so much fun. I don't think I've told you about this on the podcast yet. So we're going to do a game show called Name That Vendor, and I'm going to be your game show host, Alex Trebek. And it's going to be audience participation, and we have a whole list of questions that we ask, and you have to guess who the vendor is that we're describing. So it's going to be tons of fun. Designer Inc. and Noir Showroom are hosting us, and of course, there'll be plenty of time for meet and greet. Please, I'm telling you, meeting Heather Gillette, the founder of Designer Inc., is worth the price of admission. Honest to God, the woman is brilliant. She's so inspiring. She's such an amazing business person. So if you come for nothing else, come for that. But definitely come in for the fun. And then don't forget, on Tuesday, I'm going to be with rock star Kelly Ellis, and that event is sponsored by My Doma and Kravitz Inc. And we are going to be at the Kravitz showroom, and we are doing Design Uncorked, and I am going to talk to Kelly Ellis about how to grow your design firm, how to grow your firm from firm to rockstar empire. Okay. So, and you know me, I'm just going to get all at it, dig in deep with Kelly. And of course, she's just so much fun and so knowledgeable, and also so experienced and talented at what she does. And So I'm really looking forward to these two events, and please come. I mean, the Kelly Ellis event has, 36 or so more RSVPs already, and we're like a month and a half, a month out or something. So don't get closed out. If you're coming to Vegas, mark it down on your calendar and get into the RSVP. You can find the RSVP for these events on my website at www.windowworks-nj.com/podcast, and the RSVPs will be there. They're also they are included every week in our newsletter that goes out on Wednesday that tells you all of the news that's happening on the podcast and the events that I'm going to be at, and any news that's happening with our sponsors. So if you want to be on our email newsletter list, all you have to do is text this number, 444-999. So just take your phone out, text 444-999. When the field opens, put in the word Design Biz. No caps, no spaces. DESIGNBIZ. No caps, no spaces. Take you to one more spot where you'll put your email, and just like that, you'll be on our email list. It's very simple, very easy. I hate things that are complicated. We're going to take you 19,000 screens, right? No, it's not painful at all. So this way you're on the email list and you'll know exactly what's happening whenever it's happening. Okay, so I just want to thank you again. There's been another 3 or 4 iTunes reviews. Please don't ever think that I'm not aware of what's happening on the iTunes reviews and that I'm not thankful and that I'm not grateful if you are the one today that has decided today is the day that you are going to go over to iTunes and leave a review. I love them. I'm very appreciative, and they definitely help me when I speak to sponsors, which helps me keep bringing this show to you. So that is it for today. Thank you so much for joining me. Share the show with a designer bestie if you would, and have an excellent day. Thank you for joining me again today for another episode of A Well-Designed Business. This podcast is a production of WindowWorks in Livingston, New Jersey, your trade resource for custom window treatments and awnings. Learn more about WindowWorks at www.windowworks-nj.com. All of our music is original music by Room 2 Productions. Please contact us if you want to learn more about original music for your business or your events.